Did you guys get crazy feedback? That's a type of sound. Can you hear anything now? No? Yes? Maybe? Sound? Does that mean that there's sound? Nate? Hear the words coming out of my mouth? I don't know what UE means. Reverb for a second? But now you can hear the talking now that the reverb is gone? Beautiful. Well, sorry about that, guys. I'm on a MacBook, and MacBooks are the enemy. And no one should ever have to be on a MacBook because it's terrible. Yes, MacBooks are the enemy. Perfect. All right, so I'm glad you guys can hear me. We're back for the final stream on Tasha's Cauldron of Everything after I go back and edit out that first part of the video. I absolutely love this book. I think there's so much good stuff we can get out of this book as both DMs and players. Thank you to everybody that's not Nate and Alan that came out to the last stream because that was a lot of fun. And thank you to Nate and Alan for coming to this stream. Before I forget, this weekend we have... On Friday, not only do we have our usual Dungeons & Dragons Icewind Dale, the Will of the Frostmaiden campaign, but on Saturday, we are going to have Alan from Panopticon Gaming come on and run a Session 0 with us for Chronicles of Darkness, which is going to be a one-shot that we're going to be doing on December 19th, which will be the last thing that we do on the channel before we go on our holiday break. While we are doing that, we are also going to be giving away a copy of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and we're going to be giving away a copy of Icewind Dale, the Rime of the Frostmaiden, again, because the guy that won it was actually nice enough to donate it back to the channel and say that we should use it again in another giveaway in the future. So, hey, that is what it is, and we'll be having a great time with that. So, I'm too afraid to click off and schedule and have the intro music go and play because I'm worried that's going to make some crazy feedback again or something. So we're just going to start talking about the book. So far in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, we have covered all the martial classes. Really, the first stream we just talked about martial classes, and in the second stream we just talked about options for dungeon masters. So we talked about the new planar travel stuff, we talked about running a group with a patron, we talked about all the new options that you have for parlaying with monsters and running traps and puzzles, which is always something I feel like a lot of GMs that I personally know are kind of, not super comfortable with the whole traps and puzzles aspects all the time, even though that's something I love because I grew up on Skyrim. But let's go and talk about spellcasting. Now, every single spellcasting class in here got a bunch of cool new stuff, including some amazing sidekick time. We can talk about sidekicks. Including some amazing new spells. But we are going to talk about my favorite class in the game, and that is Warlock, because what is better than some good old Eldritch Blasting? So, the Warlock in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything got 2 new subclasses and a bunch of new Eldritch invocations, including an entirely new Pact boon, which is very kind of narrative and Eldritch Blast, exactly, which fits in very well with the new Warlock subclass in here, which is the Genie Warlock. And I think if I was going to play a Genie, I would definitely take the Pact of the Talisman at 3rd level. Basically, the Pact of the Talisman is your patron gives you an amulet, a talisman that can aid the wearer when the need is great. When the wearer fails an ability check, they can add a d4 to the roll, potentially turning the roll into a success. This benefit can be used a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and all expended uses are restored when you finish a long rest. If you lose the talisman, you can perform a 1-hour ceremony to receive a replacement from your patron. The ceremony can be performed during a short rest or long rest, and it destroys the previous amulet. The talisman turns to ash when you die. Yes, I also love the Pact of the Talisman. It was really bad in the 2 Unearthed Arcanas that we got it in, and it is very cool now, and I think it's a really neat addition, especially considering it's more of a, a lot of the Warlocked pacts, like Pact of the Blade for a Hexblade, is very dark. Pact of the Tome can also be dark. Pact of the Chain is not necessarily so dark because you can have like a pixie be your investiture of the Chainmaster. But I really like the fact that Pact of the Talisman kind of in my mind gives a different perspective to warlocks. At the same time, you could make Pact of the Talisman very, very dark, which is you could have it be like not an evil, but like a set of chains that binds you to your master. Um, I just think it's cool and I really appreciate it. A Warlock 4th level feature, which was added in this. So this was something I actually always let my players do, and the fact that it's actually a rule now makes me happy that other people were thinking that my house rules might also be worthwhile. So you can replace one cantrip you learned from this class as a Pact Magic feature with another cantrip from the Warlock spell list. Replace the option you choose for the Pact Boon feature with the higher features, and if you're 12th level higher, replace one spell from your Mystic Arcanum with another Warlock spell of the same level. So I always let my players change something if they weren't happy with it. I never liked the idea of being stuck into a choice you made at first level, and now you're level 5 and you're like, well, that kind of sucks now, doesn't it? So I'm always okay with people changing stuff out to make the game more fun, especially in a game like Dungeons and Dragons, where you're supposed to be these epic heroes and going around and kicking butt and chewing bubblegum, but you're all out of gum, and having a good time. So we can talk about a few of the new invocations. So let's jump in with a very typical Warlock spooky pact. The Undying Servitude invocation. Prerequisite, you need to be a 5th level Warlock. Funnily enough, when I was running an Acquisitions Incorporated campaign, I feel like this is exactly the invocation he would have taken at 5th level if it was around. And that is, you can cast Animate Dead without using a spell slot. Once you do so, you can't use it in this way again until you finish a long rest. I really like that. If you want to play evil warlock dude, that's definitely a step in the right direction. What else? What other invocations are really kind of interesting? Let's go over Eldritch Mind. So if you're playing a Great Old One warlock, I feel like this is a very narrative one. You have advantage on Constitution saving throws that you make to maintain your concentration on a spell. So that's incredibly useful, especially for a warlock when you've only got 2 spell slots for most of the campaign, 3, and then when you hit high levels you get a 4th one. It's very useful to not have to recast your concentration spells because those are precious slots. I remember the 2 things I hated the most when I played Warlock, which is my favorite class. The 2 things I hated the most were having to either recast a spell for concentration. Is investment trash? Let's take a look in a second. So the 2 things that I hated the most were either having to recast a spell for concentration or to have to counterspell because no one else in the party took counterspell. So I just got a question in the chat, and is investment of the Chainmaster trash? So when you've cast Find Familiar, you infuse the summoned familiar with a measure of your Eldritch power, granting the creature the following benefits. The familiar gains either flying speed or swimming speed, your choice, of 40 feet. As a bonus action, you can command the familiar to take the attack action. The familiar's weapon and attacks are considered magical for the purpose of overcoming immunity and resistance to non-magical attacks. If the familiar forces this creature to make a saving throw, it uses your spell save DC. When the familiar takes damage, you can use your reaction to grant it resistance against that damage. Honestly, I think if you're going to take Pact of the Chain, which is arguably the weakest pact, I think that makes it a lot more viable. This is definitely a step in the direction of what Pact of the Chain should feel like. So yeah, if you're going to take Pact of the Chain, it's not trash at all. It's actually quite good for that pact. So we can talk about the Tentacle Patron. I'm sure a lot of people are interested in that, either from anime or kind of getting a 40 vibe from Critical Role without being a Hexblade. But let's talk about the one that I've been excited about since the first Unearthed Arcana, and that is the Genie Patron. I just think it's so cool that we have genies as patrons now, and I hope in the future we really see some other patron options. Like we get dragons as patrons, we can get, ancient spellcasters. Well, it'd be great to kind of have the Undying, but it's trash. We can get spellcasters as patrons. So I really hope that in the future we see these types of things make a comeback where we have more of a variety of patrons. The Sphinx would make an amazing patron, yes. There's a few good homebrews for that. I should talk about that on the channel. So, the Genie Warlock patron. What does Tasha have to say? I know finding housing in Greyhawk is rough, but when genies or warlock offer you cheap rent, run. So, as the Genie patron, you have made a pact with a genie of the elemental planes. Noble genies are varied in their motivations, but most are arrogant and wield power that rivals that of lesser deities. They delight in turning the tables on mortals who often bind genies into servitude and readily enter into pacts that expand their reach. You choose your patron's kind or determine it randomly using the genie table. So, your options here are Tao Elemental for Earth, Genie for Air, Afredi for Fire, or Marid for Water. So it gives you an expanded spell list. So let's go over that right now because I think these are all fantastic. So immediately, there's some cheesy stuff we can talk about. But the Tao spell list includes Sanctuary, Spike Growth, Meld into Stone, Stone Shape, Wall of Stone. The Genie spell list is Thunderwave, Gust of Wind, Wind Wall, Great Invisibility, Seeming. The Afredi spell list is Burning Hand, Scorching Ray, Fireball, Fire Shield, and Flame Strike. So, oh boy, is that a lot of fire. And then for Marid, you have Fog Cloud, Blur, Sleet Storm, Control Water, Cone of Cold. Finally, they all get Detect Evil and Good, Phantasmal Force, Create Food and Water, Phantasmal Killer, which is a great spell, Creation, and Wish. First of all, let's talk about the fact that Wish is on this spell list, which is cool, because if you've got a genie as your patron, you should be able to just wish for stuff, which is something the actual class also bakes into its core mechanics. But the thing here is these are really, really good spell lists, and I really wish some of the sorcerer classes had spell lists this good, because these are absolutely amazing. The Afredi one, like, you just have all the fire spells. Marid is arguably a little bit weaker, but still very strong. I mean, Cone of Cold is a good spell, Sleet Storm's a good spell, Blur is useful. The Genie one, you have Wind Wall, which is useful in the right circumstances, Greater Invisibility, which is fantastic on a Warlock, and Seeming. Finally, I think we have the obvious strong pick here. Honestly, I swear, I was gonna pick this one no matter what, because I think it is the coolest. But this is also the strongest, and that would be the Tao spell list. Because, alright, Sanctuary, fine. That's fine. Sanctuary is a perfectly reasonable spell for this level. But then you get Spike Growth at 2nd level, and what do you have as a Warlock? You have Eldritch Blast, and you have Repelling Blast, and the blast that pulls people towards you. So, turn 1, cast your Spike Growth. And then for the rest of the game, you do your best cheese grater impression as you hit your enemy back and forth with Eldritch Blast and grind them across the floor. That's just so incredibly strong. Arguably, the rest of the spells on there aren't nearly as good, but oh boy, is that a winner. So let's talk about the rest of the features now that I'm done fangirling over the spell list. So, you get Genie's Vessel at 1st level. So your patron gives you a magical vessel that grants you a measure of your genie's power. The vessel is a tiny object, and you can use it as a spellcasting focus for your warlock spells. You decide what the object is, or you can determine what it is by randomly rolling on the genie's vessel table. It gives you some ideas, some traditional genie-looking stuff. So oil lamps, urns, rings with a compartment, stoppered bottle, hollow statue, ornate lanterns, any of the things that you would typically imagine a genie popping out of. Or you can make your own. Maybe your genie lives in, I don't know, a popcorn bowl. You can be creative with where you want to go in your spare time. So the vessel does more than just be a cool little trinket. And this is actually why I originally said I would take Pact of the Talisman if I was going to play a genie warlock. And that's because I would talk to the dungeon master about making the talisman by genie vessel, because I think that is very cool, very thematic, and goes together very, very well. So while you are touching the vessel, you can use it in the following ways. Bottled Respite. As an action, you can magically vanish and enter your vessel, which remains in the space you left. The interior of the vessel is an extra-dimensional space in the shape of a 20-foot radius cylinder, 20 feet high, and resembles your vessel. The interior is appointed with cushions, low tables, and is comfortable temperature. While inside, you can hear the area around your vessel as if you were in its space. You can remain inside the vessel up to a number of hours equal twice your proficiency bonus.
You can exit the vessel early if you use a bonus action to leave, if you die, or if the vessel is destroyed. When you exit the vessel, you appear in the unoccupied space closest to it. Any object lesson, the vessel remains there until destroyed. Every object stored there harmlessly appears in the unoccupied space. Once you enter the vessel, you can't enter it again until you finish a long rest. You also get Genie's Wrath, which is once during each of your turns. When you hit an attack roll, you can deal extra bonus damage. This type of damage is determined by your patron, either bludgeoning, thunder, fire, or cold. So I'm just saying, off the bat, the fact that we can take the Dow Patron, and then we can cast Spike Growth, and then we can do all that stuff with Eldritch Blast, where we're just cheese gratering our enemies to death, and then we're also dealing bludgeoning damage equal to our proficiency bonus. Let's say once during each turn. So it doesn't keep stacking with Eldritch Blast, because that would just be absolutely ridiculous, and you would just start, decimating everything. But I think that there's a strong argument for the Genie Warlock being one of the best just straight blasting classes in the game right now. And obviously, yes, Dungeons & Dragons isn't just about making cool classes, but we can make flavorful characters and still have cool classes. So the vessel's AC equals your spell save DC. Its hit points equal your Warlock level plus your proficiency bonus, and it is immune, obviously, to poison and psychic damage. If the vessel is destroyed or you lose it, you can perform a 1-hour ceremony to replace it. So basically, your vessel isn't going to be taken away from you. Now, let me just read ahead for a second, because I wonder if they took that away. Yeah, so unfortunately... yes, just like Grandma used to make freshly shredded enemies. So unfortunately, you can no longer have the whole party hang out with you inside of your Genie's vessel. That was probably one of my favorite things, but hey, I understand why that had to go away, because shoving a whole bunch of rogues into a bottle and then dumping them out in the back of the enemy camp after you use your high charisma to sneak past all the guards, yeah, I can see why we might need to get rid of that. Elemental Gift is your 6th level feature. You begin to take on the characteristics of your patron, which is always something I like when they toss into a class. Basically, whatever your patron's damage type is, you now gain resistance to it. Your 10th level feature is Sanctuary Vessel. Oh, never mind. It is still in there. They just moved it to 10th level. I'm happy that's still there. When you enter your Genie's Vessel via the Bottle's Respite feature, you can now choose up to 5 willing creatures that you can see within 30 feet of you, and the chosen creatures are drawn into the vessel. As a bonus action, you can just kick them out of there. And if anyone is ejected, everyone is ejected if you leave or die. In addition, anyone, including you, who remains within the vessel for at least 10 minutes, gets the benefit of a short rest, and anyone can add their proficiency bonus to the number of hit points they regain. So that is really, really, really good. You can just all vibe in your vessel for a short rest for 10 minutes, and then get out if you're trying to go through a dungeon. What always cracks me up is when the party just tries to just stop and take a rest in the middle of a place where it's obviously a terrible idea to take a rest. But that makes it worthwhile. It's basically just a superior version of the catnap spell, and if you've got a bard in the party, you'd be able to also add Song of Rest to everybody taking a short rest at the same time. So you're able to just all sit down, vibe, and make sure that everybody stays healthy and safe. And most importantly, you can still do the thing where you shove a bunch of rogues into the bottle and then jump them all out. Dump them all out. Yes, you could hide amongst the dragon's treasure. Limited Wish. This is, I don't know, I like everything about this class, so saying this is probably my favorite part about this class is a bit of a stretch. So you entreat your patron to grant you a small wish. As an action, you can speak your desire to your Genie's Vessel, requesting the effect of one spell that is 6th level or lower and has a casting time of 1 action. The spell can be from any class's spell list, and you don't need to meet the requirements in that spell, including costly components. The spell simply takes effect as part of this action. When you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish 1d4 long rests. So, I mean, very powerful, but they've also gone about limiting it in such a way that you can't just spam ask your patron for random shit that you feel like you should have, like I'm sure some people would do. So the fact that you even have that is a good feature, and in 3 levels after that, if you're going to get Wish, so it doesn't really matter at that point, because you've already got basically every couple of days, and after every long rest, you just get to ask for shit, and then you get it. So good for you for picking a Genie as your patron who's making all the good shit happen for you. So that was Genie. Let's go and talk about something a little bit different. Now, I wish I had a Ravnica book So I can talk about, yeah, I said 1d4. What? It's 1d4. It's 1d4 days till you get it back. I don't know what I said. I don't remember. I could have said something else. I wish I had a Ravnica book with me so I could talk about how utterly freaking awful the Circle of Spores Druid was when it was released. But now that we don't have a Ravnica book and we can just look at it in here, let's talk about why it's so much better. So the problem with playing Druids, here's the problem with playing Druids, right? So you've got the obvious best pick, which is... Oh, that's okay, Alan. You've got the obvious best pick for Druid, which is, you know, Circle of the... Why am I now blanking on it? Circle of the Moon, because you can just transform into animals, you get combat wild shape, and you just become a very, very, very effective, not only spellcaster, but melee beatstick and tank for your party. Then you have the obvious best choice for spellcasting Druid, which is Circle of the Land, because you know a bunch of spells, you've got a bunch of really good features for casting, and there's not really another pick that is as powerful as that for Druids. So let's take a look in this book at the Circle of the Spores, because finally we have not only a different flavor, but something that is also valid. So, Circle of the Spores. I'm an avid collector of spores, molds, and fungi, my most prized being a sapiens zugatama from the depths of Mount Zogan. I wouldn't want it steering a corpse around and touching my stuff, though. Tasha. So, as a Circle of the Spores Druid, they find beauty in decay and death. These Druids believe that life and death are parts of a grand cycle, with one leading to the other and then back again. Death isn't the end of life, but instead a change of state that sees life shift into a new form. I'll tell you what, if I play through Curse of Shroud again, this is the class that I'm playing. So, Circle spells. At second level, you get your symbiotic link to fungi, and your ability to tap into cycle of spells grants you access to certain spells. At second level, you get Chill Touch as a cantrip. That is great, because Chill Touch, Druids don't really have a ton of good... Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think they have any offensive cantrips. So having a reliable source of damage that you can just chuck into a fight that scales and stops enemies from healing means that you are going to be contributing something to the party that your class wasn't able to before. So, Halo of Spores is your second level feature. You are surrounded by invisible necrotic spores that are harmless until you unleash them on a creature nearby. When a creature you can see moves into a space within 10 feet of you or starts its turns there, you can use your reaction to deal 1d4 necrotic damage to them, unless it succeeds on a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC. The damage increases to 1d6 at 6th, 1d8 at 10th, and 1d4 at 14th. The fact that this is it's a reaction and you don't have a ton of those that you want to be taking because you're not the type of person that's going to be grabbing Sentinel, it is very situational because you're a spellcaster and it's within 10 feet of you. But if you're using your wild shape and you're getting up there, yeah, previously it was poison damage, and poison damage is trash. It's literally the worst type of damage in the game. I don't know why they give things poison damage when they've made it so utterly useless. But you are now able to deal necrotic damage, which is, to be fair, fairly easy to resist. But it is better than poison, and it scales. So the fact that it scales means that you're keeping up with it, and even if it's situational, it'll be useful every once in a while. And that's not the only thing you get at second level. You get your expanded spell list, which is Chill Touch, and then you get Blindness, Deafness, and Gentle Repose at third level. At 5th level, you get Animate Dead, so Zombie Druid, and Gaseous Form. At 7th level, you get Blight and Confusion. At 9th, you get Cloud Kill and Contagion. You also, at 2nd level, get something called Symbiotic Entity. You gain the ability to channel magic into your spores. As an action, you can expend a use of your Wild Shape feature to awaken those spores rather than transforming into a beast form. And you gain 4 temporary hit points for each level you have in this class. While this feature is active, you gain the following benefits. When you deal your Halo of Spores damage, roll the damage die a second time and add it, so that's very, very good. And your melee attacks deal an extra 1d6 necrotic damage to any creature that they hit. These benefits last for 10 minutes until you lose all these temporary hit points or until you lose your Wild Shape feature again. So, that is pretty cool for me because, so one of my favorite classes in the game is Death Domain Cleric. And the fact that you're able to, it's a pretty strong multi-class already going Death Domain Cleric Druid, and maybe I'll just do a video
one of these days where I just sit down and make a character. But being able to go Death Domain Cleric Druid and then being able to take the Death Domain's Cleric ability for their Necrotic Divine Strike and ignoring resistance to necrotic damage, and then the Druid ability to be able to do that, I think you could not only have a pretty strong character in the direction of death and decay and the cycle of life, but you could also have a very flavorful character going in the same direction where you have a strong backstory and you don't even need to be evil, because I feel like a lot of Death Domain clerics are evil. They worship evil gods of death, but you could worship a god that represents the cycle of life, and that is your approach to death rather than the evil of Death Domain cleric, although I see why they tend to be evil because they have a lot of evil features. So at 6th level, you get Fungal Infestation. Your spores gain the ability to infest a corpse and animate it. If a beast or humanoid that is small or medium dies within 10 feet of you, you can use your reaction to animate it, causing it to stand up immediately with 1 hit point. The creature uses the zombie stat blocks from the monster manual. Yep, 6 is the same. Blah, blah, blah. In combat, the zombie's turn immediately comes after yours. It obeys your mental commands, and the only action it can take is the attack action, making 1 melee attack. That's an okay feature if we compare it to Death Domain Cleric. Death Domain Cleric is better, because you just get a zombie and it doesn't have 1 hit point. It has the right amount of hit points. Yeah, I mean, that's perfectly fine. Having an extra thing in the party is never not useful. So 10th level, you gain the ability to seed an area with deadly spores. As a bonus action, while your symbiotic entity feature is active, you can hurl spores up to 30 feet away from you, where they swirl in a 10-foot cube for 1 minute. The spores disappear early if you use this feature again, if you dismiss them as a bonus action, or if your symbiotic entity feature is no longer active. Whenever a creature moves into the cube or starts its turn there, that creature takes your Halo of Spores damage unless the creature succeeds on a con save against their spell save. A creature can take this damage no more than once per turn. While the cube of spores resists, you can't use your Halo of Spores reaction. That is a pretty okay ability. Again, the things that bake it into within 10 feet of you is not so great. But the fact that you can chuck it 30 feet away means that it is actually useful now, because you don't necessarily always want to be up front when you're a spellcaster. So, fungal body. The fungal spores in your body alter you. You can't be blinded, deafened, poisoned, and any critical hit against you counts as a normal hit unless you're incapacitated. So, overall, I think it's definitely just the change. First of all, adding chill touch is a nice bonus. And then the change from poison damage to necrotic damage is a big enough boon for this class to make it not only playable, but pretty good. And it gives the opportunity, in my opinion, to make a pretty strong and flavorful multi-class with Death Domain Cleric, which is always something I appreciate. So let's keep talking about Druids for a little bit longer. Yeah, it is great. Because I feel like Druids are one of the classes in the game, except for the beginning of 5th edition where everyone and their mom wanted to play a Circle of the Moon Druid. I feel like Druids are one of the classes in the game that are a little bit underappreciated, and I love what this book has done for them. So, when my friend Nate was, not this Nate, another Nate. When my friend Nate was running an Eberron campaign, my brother played a Circle of the Stars Druid when it was in its Unearthed Arcana form. And it was already a fantastic subclass. And it's not gotten really any worse in this book. So basically, Circle of the Stars, you're in tune to the flow of the universe. That is where you get your druidic power from. You're in tune to the stars above you, and they give you the ability to do all your cool druidy magic stuff. So, star map. While you have the star map, you know the guidance cantrip, so everybody knows how freaking annoying that is when the cleric's just like, add a d4 to it, add a d4 to it, add a d4 to it. You know Guiding Bolt as a prepared spell. It counts as a druid spell, and it doesn't count against the number of spells you can have prepared. Finally, you can cast Guiding Bolt without expending a spell slot. You can do so a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. If you lose the map, you can perform a 1-hour ceremony to magically create a replacement. So basically, you're not going to give up on it. And then it gives you a bunch of random ideas for what exactly your map might look like.
So already we have a contender with Circle of the Land for a valid spellcasting druid subclass, because you get Guiding Bolt for free, basically. And you can do so, and you can just cast it for free as well. So that is a very powerful feature and a big buff to not only yourself, but also to anybody else that is going to be making attack roll spells in the party. So, Starry Form is your other second level feature. As a bonus action, you can spend a use of your Wild Shape feature to take on a Starry Form, rather than transforming into a beast. While in your Starry Form, you can retain your game statistics, but your body becomes luminous. Your joints shimmer. This form sheds bright light in 10-foot radius, and 10 more for dim light. It lasts for 10 minutes. It ends early when you die or incapacitated. When you assume your Starry Form, you get to choose a benefit. So, one of them is Archer. When you're in the Archer form, as a bonus action on each of your subsequent turns, you can make a ranged spell attack, hurling a luminous arrow that targets one creature within 60 feet of you. On a hit, the attack deals radiant damage equal to 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier. So again, another contender for Circle of the Lands, because you now have a ranged way to deal damage. Chalice. When you have the Chalice active, whenever you cast a spell using a spell slot that restores hit points to a creature within 30 feet of you, you can regain hit points equal to 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier. So Chalice used to be... Yes, it's not a spell. It's a spell-like thing. So it can't be counterspelled. Chalice used to be super freaking busted, because whenever you would heal somebody, you would be able to just heal them again for 1d8 and then just keep doing it. So it's reined in quite considerably. However, getting to heal yourself for free is still pretty good. And finally, you get Dragon. A constellation of a wise dragon appears on you when you make an intelligence or wisdom check, wisdom check, or con save to maintain concentration on a spell. You can treat a roll of 9 or lower on the d20 as 10. So if you have a really clutch spell that you need to maintain concentration on, you can use Dragon to do that. Chalice is situational. If you're in a situation that you need to do a lot of healing, or you need to tank yourself and you're also trying to keep party members up, Chalice is a good one to go to. And finally, Archer is just a way of dealing consistent damage over the course of a fight. You can also obviously set up some cool stuff where you can do Guiding Bolt and then Archer. Your 6th level feature is Wheel or Woe. So your wheel is even whenever... So basically, sorry, I need to explain the way this works. When you finish a rest, you get to roll a die. If it's even, you get the even bonus from the stars. And if it's odd, you get the odd bonus from the stars. Your even bonus is whenever a creature you can see within 30 feet of you is about to make an attack, a saving throw, or an ability check, you can use your reaction to roll a d6 and add the number to the total rolled. Woe is whenever a creature you can see within 30 feet of you is about to make an attack roll, a saving throw, or an ability check, you can use your reaction to roll a d6 and subtract from the number rolled. Obviously, I think Woe is a lot better than Wheel. However, Wheel is also useful. A lot of people really like, for good reasons, the Great Weapon Master feat and the Sharpshooter feat, which makes you less likely to hit for a chance to do a ton of damage. And if you're able to help them out and make the chances of them hitting a little bit better, it's a big buff to the party. I think somebody did the math, and statistically the best source of damage is just one Battle Master fighter with Great Weapon Master and a two-handed polearm, and taking the polearm master fighting style feat as well, and then just a party of people to just buff the crap out of him and to make him ridiculously consistent. Not that that's a fun way to play at all and extremely power gamey, but I just thought it's funny and something this class can help out in. Finally, Twinkling Constellations. Your stuff scales. Archer goes to 1d8, Chalice goes to 2d8, and while the dragon is active, you now get a flying speed. Moreover, at the start of each of your turns while in your starry form, you can change while constellations glimmer on your body. So, Dragon getting a flying speed is whatever. I mean, fly is a spell that you have access to at this point. But it doesn't hurt at all to have that as another source of flying for when you might need it. Archer now doing 1d8 damage, so you're doing 2d8. That might sound mediocre, but it's 2d8 damage as a bonus action, and it's not the primary thing that you're doing on that turn. So it's actually pretty good. And Chalice going to 2d8 is very, very good, because that is 2d8 bonus healing now. It's not Life Domain Cleric levels of healing, but it is very, very, very respectable healing. Personally, if I was filling in for a party and I really wanted to play a druid that was just there to cast spells and overall be helpful, I think Circle of the Stars is just as valid as Circle of the Land. Finally, we're going to do one more druid class, the last druid class in this book, and this is the one that I was excited for when it was in Unearthed Arcana form, and that is Circle of Wildfire. I actually have a Tiefling Circle of Wildfire druid that I've never gotten to play, and at that point in time, I've actually not looked at it yet in this book, but at that point in time, it was the premier Blasty La Blast class for druids. So let's see how it stood up in this book. I can't tell you how many times I've burned everything to the ground and started over. That's solid advice from Tasha right there. So, Circle of the Wildfire, only you can prevent wildfires. Forest fires, whatever the bear says. I don't remember what the bear says, but anyway. So, for Circle of the Wildfire druids, you understand the destructive power of fire and its own role in creation. So, my fluff was I became friends with the Phoenix, but you could flavor it however the hell you want. So, your Circle of Wildfire feature at 2nd level. You formed a bond with a wildfire spirit, a primal being of creation and destruction. Your link with the spirit grants you access to some spells that aren't normally available. Once you access these spells, you always have it prepared, so in expanded spell list, we all know the way that works. So, what are the spells that you get? Spells, 2nd level spells, Burning Hands and Cure Wounds. So, Cure Wounds is already on the Druid spell list, but the fact that you never need to prepare it is a pretty nice buff. At 3rd level, you get Flaming Sphere and Scorching Ray. Those are two very solid spells. Flaming Sphere is one of my favorites because it's a way to do something consistent with your bonus action. And Scorching Ray is one of the damage spells that probably scales best. So, Revivify, always useful. Aura of Life, Fire Shield, Flame Strike, and Mass Cure Wounds. Those are fantastic spell options. So, you get, at 2nd level, Summons Wildfire Spirit. You can summon the Primal Spirit bound to you as an action. You can spend one of your uses of Wild Shape. I love all these different uses of Wild Shape that we now have available to us because it means that we're not locked into always transforming into an animal, because that's not what everybody wants out of being a druid. Some people want to do other things with it. So the fact that that's just an option for all the druids now is really, really great. So the spirit appears in an unoccupied space within 30 feet of you. Each creature within 10 feet of it other than you must make a dex saving throw or take 2d6 fire damage. It's friendly and obeys your commands. So it has a bunch of stats. But most importantly, it gets another ranged attack which it gets to contribute, which is your spell attack modifier to hit. So that's probably going to be pretty good. And then 1d6 plus your proficiency bonus in fire damage. It can also yeet around the place and take creatures with it up to 15 feet. Then, however, when they land, they need to take 1d6 plus your proficiency bonus in fire damage if they fail a dex save. So, Enhanced Bond is what you get at 6th level. The bond with your Wildfire Spirit enhances your destructive and restorative spells. Whenever you cast a spell that deals fire damage or restores hit points while your Wildfire Spirit is summoned, roll a d8 and gain a bonus equal to the number rolled to damage or healing rolls. In addition to that, this is exactly the same from the Unearthed Arcana. It was perfectly fine. I'm glad they kept it. In addition, when you cast a spell with a range other than yourself, the spell can originate from you or your wildlife spirit. That's really good. That's really, really good. Mobility is always a big problem for not always a big problem for spellcasters, but it's something they need to be aware of because they need to be in the right place at the right time. So if you need to get up the stupid barbarian or blood hunter who ran into combat and got himself downed, then this is a way you can do it without getting yourself hurt. If you need to get an angle on somebody to snipe them with a spell and you can't do it from your position, you can do it from the wildlife spirit. That's fantastic. So, Cauterizing Flames is your 10th level ability. You gain the ability to turn death into magical flames that can heal or incinerate. When a small or larger creature dies within 30 feet of you or your wildlife spirit, a harmless spectral flame springs forth in the dead creature space and flickers there for a minute. When a creature you can see enters that space, you can use your reaction to extinguish the spectral flame there and either heal the creature or deal fire damage to it. The healing or damage equals 2d10 plus your wisdom modifier. You can use this reaction a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. That is a super solid ability, not too OP, but perfectly fine. And finally, 14th level, the bond with your wildlife spirit can save you from death. If the spirit is within 120 feet of you and you reduce 0 hit points and thereby fall unconscious, you can cause the spirit to drop to 0 hit points. You regain half your hit points and immediately rise to your feet. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So that capstone. So They made it a lot less blasty at the higher levels from the Unearthed Arcana, which is fine. However, they kept a lot of the flavor there. You're still this druid who gets to draw on the destruction that nature offers, and it's more of a utility thing. When you go down, you get back up with half of your hit points remaining, which at 14th level is quite a lot for somebody rolling a d8 hit die every time they level up, and probably has a decent con because they're a spellcaster. And your 10th level feature means that you're just a little bit better at what you do, even if you're not the creme de la creme of blowing shit up. It's a really good class, and I'm happy for druids. They deserved this. So we don't have enough time to do a deep dive into all the other spellcasters like we did with this one, but let's jump over to Sorcerer and see what Sorcerer has to offer. So we're going to talk about my favorite from this spell list, and that is the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. So this went through a few iterations. I remember the first one I really liked the flavor of, because it was like creepy eldritch sorcerer. You could walk through walls and turn into pudding and jello and be all creepy Cthulhu guy. Obviously, I have a big love for H.P. Lovecraft, so there's that. But then it went over to, I forget what they called it. It wasn't Aberrant Mind. It jumped from Aberrant Mind to like Psychic Soul or something. It was another attempt at psionics. However, in this book, they kind of found a middle ground between creepy Cthulhu sorcerer and psionic sorcerer. So Tasha says, tentacles, psychic powers, beings from beyond the stars. One person's bad dreams is another's good time. I wholeheartedly agree with you there, Tasha. So it has some different aberrant origins here. Either you were exposed to the far realm's warping influence. As a child, you befriended a flumph. Or you were impregnated with a mind flayer tadpole, but the metamorphosis never completed. So those are all different options for being an eldritch sorcerer in this fashion. But yes, that is a druid with tank ability, Cody. But I'm sure you can think of your own. I know there's tons of ideas I have for Cthulhu-based sorcerers, and there's a lot of options for what you can do with the ooey gluey, slimy eldritch deity theme. So, psionic spells. You learn additional spells when you reach certain levels in this class, as shown on the psionic spells table. So we all know how expanded spell list works. First level, Arms of Hadar, Dissonant Whispers, Mind Sliver. Those are pretty decent spells. Yes, Flumph could be a sidekick, Nate. You really want me to talk about sidekicks, don't you? Third level, you get Calm Emotions and Detect Thoughts. Fifth level, Hunger of Hadar, which is super powerful and super thematic for this class. Seventh level, you get Everard's Black Tentacles and Summon Aberration. And ninth level, you get Rary's Telepathic Bond and Telekinesis. Your first level feature is telepathic speech. You get to talk to somebody within 30 feet of you as a bonus action. The telepathic feature lasts a number of times equal to your sorcerer level. Your sixth level feature is psionic sorcery. Whenever you cast any spells of first level or higher from your psionic spell list, you can cast it by expending a spell slot or as normal. So that's pretty useful. Or by expending sorcery points equal to the spell's level. So that's useful if you're trying to maintain spell slots for something important. You never know when you might need spell slots down the line, and the fact that you have meta magic that can be used to convert spell slots back and forth with sorcery points, that's pretty useful. Psychic defense, you gain resistance to psychic damage and you advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened. Now, the resistance to psychic damage is kind of whatever because it's not that common of a damage unless you watch the video coming out on the Sorrowsworn monsters that I just did. But the saving throws against being charmed or frightened are everywhere, and those are really sucky, especially if you're fighting a high-level boss that can charm you and make you use your sorcery stuff to beat up your teammates. That's rough. Finally, at 14th level, you get a number of random options for being all eldritchly, either turning invisible, flying around, swimming better, or turning into a slimy and pliable material and moving through a space as small as an inch without squeezing at all. So, however you want to flavor your eldritchy goodness, those are options that you have at 14th level. Finally, the capstone feature is Warping Implosion. You can unleash your aberrant power as a space warping anomaly. As an action, you can teleport to an unoccupied space you can see within 120 feet of you. Immediately after you disappear, each creature within 30 feet of the space you left must make a strength saving throw. On a failed save, a creature takes 3d10 force damage and is pulled straight toward the space you left, ending in an unoccupied space as close to your former space as possible. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much damage and isn't pulled. So these are, look, it's a perfectly fine warlock it's not warlock, sorcerer subclass. Is it as strong as like divine soul? Absolutely not. Is it very flavorful and very, very cool? Yes, it is. It is a very cool option. It's not as maybe psionic focused as I would have liked, but it is a very cool class, and I'm pretty happy with what they did with it. So I think that's all we're going to talk about for the actual spell casters. But let's take a look at the spells themselves. So in addition, let me get back to the spell part. In addition, a whole bunch of classes in here have gotten got more spells. They also changed some of the more busted spells in the game, some of the more busted cantrips, and then they added a ton of new spells. So let's go over, they changed a bunch of cantrips like Lightning Lure and Mind Sliver, but let's go over the base ones that they changed. So Green Flame Blade, obviously the internet freaked out. There was a big nerf. It's a lot less good than it once was. You brandish the weapon used in the spells. So basically Green Flame Blade, when you used to be able to use it, you used to have a range of 5 feet. The fact that you had a range of 5 feet meant that you could use Spell Sniper with it, but now you can't because it has a range of self. Finally, also the spell itself just took a pretty big nerf on damage, right? Brandish the spell's weapon. On a hit, the target suffers the weapon's normal effect, and you can cause green fire to leap. Yeah. So you used to just immediately deal D8 fire damage. However, now it's just spellcasting modifier. Then it's 1d8. At 11th level, it's 2d8 and 2d8, and then 17th is 3d8 and 3d8. So that was a change. It's not the end of the world. It's not as big of a nerf as some people on the internet are making it. It's still a good cantrip. If you're playing Blade Singer, which is in this book so much better than it was before, it's going to be your go-to other than Booming Blade. But let's go over some of the new spells in this book. They made a bunch of summoning spells ranging from Aberrant Spirit to Bestial Spirit to Construct to Elemental to Celestial to Shadow to Undead, and all of them are really good and really interesting. But let's just go over the basis for how all of them work. Basically, it's always going to have an AC of 11 plus the level of the spell. It's going to have hit points ranging from like 15 to 30 plus 15 for each spell level above 3rd, or whatever the casting level of the spell is. And then it's going to have a range of abilities from attacks to frightful presences to deathly touches and random auras that you can get very tactical with the way you set them up and mess with the people that you're fighting over the course of a campaign, because you can start to learn your common enemy's fighting style and then summon different spirits to help you out that'll be more useful than they might have been before. So all the summoning spells are very, very good, very flavorful, and they all match up perfectly, and they're finally a very useful summoning spell that doesn't feel like a waste. Finally, let's go over one of the big boy spells in this area. Let's do Blade of Disaster, which is the 9th level spell in this book. So, Blade of Disaster. You create a blade-shaped planar rift about 3 feet long in an unoccupied space you can see. It lasts for the duration of the spell. When you cast a spell, you can make up to 2 melee spell attacks with the blade against one single creature or a structure within 5 feet of the blade. On a hit, this creature takes 4d12 force damage. This attack scores a critical hit on an 18 or higher. On a critical hit, the blade deals an extra 8d12 force damage for a total of 12d12. As a bonus action on your turn, you can move the blade up to 20 feet to an unoccupied space you can see, and then make up to 2 melee spell attacks with it again. The blade can harmlessly pass through any barriers, including a wall of force. Wow, is that a good spell? You're just able to basically just run around and wreck things from the ethereal, well, whenever you want to summon this blade from. As far as 9th level spells go, this is such a good one because
It's not like Meteor Swarm is obviously great, right? Who doesn't want to roll 40d6 damage? That's awesome. But the fact that you have, and I understand that 9th level spells aren't a big concern for most people, but I like them. So the fact that you have a 9th level spell that's able to stay with you and doesn't just go away as soon as you cast it is a massive force multiplier. The Spatter is a guy. Is a massive force multiplier, and that means that you're able to really dish out the hurt at higher levels. Especially considering you only get one 9th level spell slot. I don't know what Nate's talking about over there. Finally, because it is something that is available to players, and who doesn't like a good old-fashioned quest to go grab a magic item, let's talk about magic items. Now, I don't know if anybody's looked at some of the magic items in this book, but oh god, are some of them nasty, nasty, nasty levels of powerful. And if I could count and figure out what page I'm supposed, yeah, the tattoos are great, and I've used them in my campaigns. And I'm glad that they're officially published now, but there are things in here that make me want to write entire campaigns just for these magic items. See, Alan, I will, if you don't stop by the stream this Friday, I will be seeing you this weekend, where you're going to be the one that has to do all the talking. So, for those of you that don't know, because I don't think I've ever talked about this on the channel, but the first campaign that I ever ran was based around Neril, which was a god of death from Greyhawk, and Rao, which was his sworn enemy, and Tasha is from Greyhawk. So, Rao had a crook, which was especially good at banning demons to the abyss. Ages ago, the serene god Rao created a tool to shield his fledgling faithful servants against the evils of the lower planes. Yet as eons passed, mortals developed their own methods of dealing with the existential threats, and the Crick was largely forgotten. In recent ages, though, the Crick of Rao was rediscovered and leveraged against the rising power of the Witch Queen Igvilv, one of the many names of Tasha. Though she was defeated, Igvilv managed to damage the Crick during the battle, infecting it with an insidious curse and the potential for the future victory. In the aftermath, the Crick was again lost. Occasionally it reappears, but the famed artifact is not what it was. Whether or not the artifact bearers realize its full threat, a few risk using the Crick of Rao potentially for the final time. So this is what makes me want to write an entire campaign. It has two major beneficial, one major beneficial, and one minor detrimental properties. It has 6 charges for spells: Aura of Life, Aura of Purity, Banishment, Beacon of Hope, and Mass Cure Wounds, which are all good guy spells. Absolute Banishment: while you are attuned to the Crick and holding it, you can spend 10 minutes to banish all but the mightiest fiends within a mile. Any fiend with a challenge rating of 19 or higher is unaffected, though. Each banished fiend is sent back to his home plane and can't return to the plane the Crick of Rao banished it from. However, failing Matrix: whenever the Crick of Rao absorbs Absolute Banishment property is used, or whenever its last charge is expended, roll on the extra planar reversal table. Any creature conjured as a result of this effect appears in a random unoccupied space within 60 feet of you and is not under your control. So, options is a portal to a random plane, imps and quasits, succubi and incubi, barb devils and vrox, arcanolots, a night hags, and a rakasha. That is a nightmare nobody wants to deal with. An ice devil and a marilith, a balor and a pit fiend. At the DM's discretion, a portal opens into the presence of an archdevil or demon lord instead, or Igvilv's curse, which is the worst possible outcome. When the Crick was last used against Igvilv, the Witch Queen lashed out at the artifact, infecting its magical matrix. Over the years, the curse has spread within the Crick, threatening to violently pervert its ancient magic. If this occurs, the Crick of Rao is destroyed, its magical matrix inverting, exploding into a 50-foot diameter portal. This portal functions as a permanent gate spell. The gate then, once per round on initiative count 20, audibly speaks a name in Bigwill's voice. Doing so summons a fiend until the gate calls out every name of the fiend that the Crick has ever banished. This process takes 18 years to complete, and at the end of which the gate becomes a permanent portal to Pasnu, the first layer of the abyss, and all the fiends are set free. So you can destroy or repair it
which is what would make such an awesome campaign. Think about a campaign where this is the magic item that the whole thing is centered about. This is the thing that you are going out there to look for. I think that is they'd be an incredibly cool story, because you're going to be touching it at some point. Maybe not this campaign, but next campaign. You're going to have a story involved Igvilv. You're going to have fiends. You're going to have planar travel. It would just be so cool. And I get, like, the traditional quest thing is whatever, but, you know, I still think it's cool. There's more options in here. So if you're a DM, take a look at the Demonomicron, and I'm probably going to make a whole video just on questing after magic items and some ideas, because I ran a lot of the 7 parts campaign, which was surprisingly successful, and maybe we'll bring the conclusion of it to the channel. But there's Teeth of an Ancient Dragon, there's the Demonomicron, there's a bunch of cool magic items, and oh god, so many campaign ideas. So that'll go on the list of videos that we need to make. Guys, thank you for hanging out with me tonight for the final dive into Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. This time we had less people, but we had Nate back, so that made up for it. I am glad we've been able to do this. I'm glad our sponsors, the Bearded Dragon Games and Oni Onto New York, is making it possible for us to do these cool things on the channel. And most importantly, I'm excited to be playing Dungeons & Dragons this Friday from 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where our players got themselves into one hell of a fight that I'm not even making an attempt to balance. So I can't wait to see what happens there. Go ahead and check out the channel. I just had a fantastic game of Warhammer with my buddy James. Cody and I filmed a fantastic battle report, so that's going to be coming along. In addition to the fact that today I finished editing the last VOD so we can have all the VODs over on the channel. You have all been wonderful. I have been Jake from Monsters and Munchkins, and until I see you again.